Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Mr. Sidney Brownwood.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to this, the latest Lardy Oddcast. Here we are back in the Lard Island studio, and this time I'm joined not only by our usual panel of Richard and Nick, the Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood of Wargaming, but also by a voice our listeners will have heard from another podcast produced by Wargames, Soldiers and Strategy, our great friend Jasper Ortois. Jasper, welcome to the Oddcast.
Thank you, Sidney. Thank you very much.
So I suppose to make you feel at home, we ought to just run a sound check here. I'm recording. Nick, are you recording?
I'm recording, Sid. I'm recording.
I'm recording, Sydney. I'm recording. Are you recording?
Broadsword calling Danny Boy. Broadsword calling Danny Boy. Over.
I'm recording. Thank you, Richard.
I'm
Jasper,
recording.
Are you recording?
Yes, Sidney. Thank you.
I'm
recording
recording.
too.
I'm recording too.
Well, Jasper, our listeners will know you as the editor-in-chief of Caravanserai, with responsibility for titles such as Wargames, Soldiers and Strategy, Ancient Warfare, Medieval Warfare. It's a great stable of magazines, but what can you tell us about your wargaming hobby? How long have you been involved, and which are your favourite games to play?
I have not been involved in wargaming very long. I think I've told this story on some podcast before, but this is probably a different crowd. So let's see, I'm a bit younger than you guys, so I didn't start with any Games Workshop. No, thank you. We didn't have Games Workshop in town, and obviously, as a little kid, English was not really an option yet. But for me, this really started when we first went to the Dutch National Tin Figure Museum, which is in a tiny town in the Northeast, and they sold Prince August molds there. They still do. They have a large diorama of the Battle of Waterloo with something like 10,000 flats. And I was probably 10 or 11 at the time, and that really got my attention. And so I asked for some of those molds on my birthday, and I started casting figures. And I think one of those gifts came with a booklet that mentioned the idea that you could play games with these figures, but I think it was in English. I don't have it anymore. So I was aware of it, but I mostly continued sort of building, my own diorama, mixing Prince August figures with Eschi plastics and Airfix. And I mean, they're not exactly the same scale, but I didn't care. And then I transitioned into later on the 35th scale models, more model building, and only about it's not 10 years of just after my dad passed away, I got into wargaming proper because I found a club that was near Nijmegen, where we lived at the time, and I played in a Warhammer Ancient Battles tournament. And a couple months later, WSS was mentioned to stop publishing from the original publisher in Spain. And then I got in contact with Guy, and Guy is a terrible influence for anyone who wants to stay away from wargaming. So, that's where it went all wrong. And I play, as it happens, some TooFatLardies games. I'm not sure if you ever heard of them. Chain of Command and Water Tanker, and I sometimes play Black Powder, which is indeed quite generic, but I really like the AWI expansion, which does add some good rules for the American War of Independence, which is a particular interest of mine. And I enjoy the Black Sea ships, which are, I haven't put any together recently, but I like the idea, and maybe just try and play the games slightly earlier than it's meant to be, also for the American War of Independence. The ships are, essentially the same. You just have to imagine mostly without carronades.
So you're a war games butterfly like the rest of us. Then what you're saying about the Prince August figures really resonated with me, because I remember having those molds And you used to be able to buy the molds. I remember I had some French Grenadiers and some Highlanders, British Infantry, and even a Scots Grey I had as well. And you used to be able to buy the metal that you could melt down to go in the molds. But I remember becoming obsessed with that. And I used to go around the house trying to find anything I could that I could melt down to make it into figures. I used to stand in the kitchen and make these figures for hours after hours. God knows what I must have put in that little heating pan, but anything I could find, I put it in there to see if it would melt. And if it would melt, it would get poured into the mold.
It's a really strange thing, isn't it? Because in the 70s, you were given things like chemistry sets to play with as kids, which basically meant you could make explosions in your bedroom, normally sort of heating things with a Bunsen burner. And like both of you, I well remember with a mate of mine called Mike Brown, we used to heat bits of metal in an old pan on my mum's stove. How we didn't have scalded fingers, let alone flaming pigs, for our WRG Ancients game, I've no idea.
What was his name? Like Brown?
Mike Brown.
Mike Brown.
Mike Brown. Great guy, by the way.
I must admit, I never thought my parents were that keen on me, but I have to admit that they never bought me anything where I could actually do myself such physical damage as pouring molten lead on the top of the cooker. But there we go. Although I did have a chemistry set, and so I suppose they were hoping I'd blow myself up rather than burn myself to death.
For me, it was the late 80s. But the effect was the same. Actually, we happened to live in a town that used to have a fairly large tin industry, as in making tin plates and cups and stuff. And there was a small shop in town where they sold that stuff. And that guy had tin sometimes. Of course, pure tin is not very good for casting, but if you mix it up with some of the Prince August stuff, it kind of worked. And in the end, I think I got through pretty much unscathed. My brother still has a burn scar on his hand because little brothers always get in the way, and I had just cast the mold and I tried to put the spoon aside with some that was, what is it, 250 centigrade, and his hand was there, so
Serves him right.
Splashed with molten metal. What brother could do more than
exactly? He became a lawyer, so
And there's Sydney.
Good job you splashed him earlier than now.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be real trouble if you did it now.
So you're
Probably.
making explosions in your bedroom with your chemistry set, were you, Sid? Well, it's I guess that's something that we could all aspire to.
Not recently, thankfully. But anyway, all of this sounds absolutely fantastic, Jasper. But we haven't just invited you here to talk about molten metal chemistry sets and tin foundries in the Eastern Netherlands. What we've invited you to do is talk about a couple of really exciting things and developments. But before we do that, will you please join us on a walk to the Lard Island workshop where we can get up to speed on what we've been doing since the last podcast. So here we are in the workshop, the usual assorted chaos littered around the floor, the walls, the ceiling, everywhere we can sit. Richard, what on earth's been going on here, sir?
No, I'm a bit like the Bobby Sands of wargaming sheds, aren't I? Really, everything's covered in shit. Yeah, it's kind of a bit messy, but there we go. That's life. I've been trying to really focus, not just in the workshop, but also in terms of getting things done in Strength and Honor and the O Group Normandy supplement, and What a Cowboy and the Far East supplement. So not just in the workshop, but I've been busy with loads of stuff. Strength and Honor is in the advanced stage of layout now, and I think we're looking at a release date for that, which I know a lot of people are interested in, of the 25th of April, with us taking advanced orders from probably the first week of April onwards, as soon as we've seen the printer's proof. So that's been good. O Group Normandy supplement, really good. That's at layout. That's with the layout team now. So if you want a game Ost battalions or Free French or Polish, as well as the usual British, Canadians, Germans and Americanos, then that's all in there. What a Cowboy had some intense gaming fun with that. I was in Evesham yesterday. I don't know if you know, but Jim Ibbotson is doing some superb artwork for that. And I wanted Jim to have an opportunity to play the rules to provide him with suitable inspiration. So I went up there with him and Aid, good mate Aid Deacon, and we had a couple of games. And Jim, actually, first time gamer on this system, won both games and spanked little Adrian's bottom soundly. So that, not literally, thank God, but that was so that was fun. So that's been busy. Far East, well, lots of play testing there. We've been doing a lot of gaming in Hong Kong. We're just about to move on to Malaya and Singapore. So busy with that. But in here, look at this, mate. Look at this. This is a bath mat, and I was up at Vatten Attack in York a couple of weeks ago, where John Savage and Charlie Walker were running Strength and Honor for their adoring fans, and I was really impressed with what they had done with a bath mat in terms of making trees. Hold on a second, let me just zoom over to pick it up off the huge pile of crap. So look at this. This is great. This is great radio. So here's the bath mat, which I'm going to cut out and base. I'm going to be making a video of that actually for Lard TV to help people do it. But I got this from Dunelm, the artist formerly known as Dunelm Mill. But you can get them. My wife picked one up from Marks and Spencer's, which is probably slightly better quality. And I was eyeing that up before she made very clear that I couldn't have it. Nick?
So what I've seen there, Rich, that you've held up is they're like little bobbles. They're like tiny sort of 1 centimetre across bobbles that are stuck to a mat. So it's quite a soft thing. Half an inch, mate, for you.
Yeah, about half an inch. Yeah, that's right. That makes sense. Yeah, they are. They might be a bit smaller than that, to be honest with you. 1 centimetre is about right. What's 2.5 millimetres between friends, mate? Yeah, they look good. And I was amazed. Mark's done some, but I was amazed to see what Charlie and John had done. They were absolutely superb. Whole forests. They look great. So I've just got a load of bases from Charlie Foxtrot, which came through the post today. And I'm going to be making a video using some of theirs, also the wall bases, square terrain bases, which I think are going to look really good. So I'm going to make, as I say, make a video of that. So that's good. But the other thing I've really been enjoying is these. I'm painting them at the moment. These are the cowboys from Great Escape Games, the plastic sprue. I bought a box of them at VAP. I got a box of them at VAP, and I thought these are good because what I liked about these, you get so many multi-purpose figures that are not multi-purpose. That set of arms is clearly designed to go with that torso, and that torso is clearly designed to go with that set of legs. The biggest disappointment of my childhood was discovering that Tamiya's multi-purpose 1/35 scale figures were not multi-purpose at all. It was absolute bullshit. So, and if you wanted to make them multi-purpose, you needed to bugger about with milliput and stuff like that. And as a child, I didn't have the patience. And in fact, as an adult, I don't have the patience. So, but the great thing about these is they really are multi-purpose. You get so many arms, so many different heads. You get 5 sets of legs, 5 torsos. So the amount of variety you can get in there is huge. Now, this character here is particularly key to this whole discussion because in the What a Cowboy campaign I've been playing, run by John Savage, I've got a guy called Brendan. Well, probably won't mention his name, actually. It's not in particularly good taste, but his name's Brendan. And he has got a pistol with a shoulder stock, quite unusual. Now, nobody makes a figure of a guy with a pistol with a shoulder stock, but I've been able, because they're plastic, to chop them up and stick them together. And this guy's got a pistol with a shoulder stock, and he's holding it like this, as though he's shooting with it, as though he's shooting a sort of very short rifle or carbine. And it's the ability to really make figures that represent the characters in your game and really look like them, I think has been superb. And they are multi-purpose. So a huge shout out for Great Escape Games for creating the first set of multi-purpose figures that ever are really multi-purpose. So that's, and I'd like to put that forward, mate, as the best bit on my bench.
Duly recorded.
Yeah.
There's something really nice, isn't there, about when in the skirmish game, creating a character and creating a figure for a character, and that sort of mix and match approach with different arms and heads to get your character looking just like your figure on the table is something which is really, really attractive and slightly addictive as well.
Yeah, and what's interesting in the What a Cowboy campaign is that your character develops. You take him on as a greenhorn, and then he develops through into a shootist, and then a gunslinger, and then, if you're lucky, a legend. And as his or her career goes on, they gain traits, and they can spend money on buying bits of kit and everything. And the fact that you really associate with that character, and you want to have the figure, so that's great, Nicholas.
I've also noticed, talking about characters and developing them and taking individual figures, I've noticed that the Silver Bullet range from Nick at North Star, they are now appearing as sharp practice characters. Yeah, exactly as we might have all predicted. They appear now as leading different groups within sharp practice. It's just proof, isn't it, that figures have multi-purpose, Rich. Even if the multi-purpose needs to be developed by somebody with an imaginative mindset and not given to him straight from the peg.
Wise words, mate. Wise words.
I think one thing with those skirmish games as well, even more so with other figure war games, is that because you've normally singly based the figure, it's so versatile to swap from one smaller scale game to another smaller scale game. So people just get more use out of the figures that they paint, and that justifies the investment of time in making those figures look really unique.
Yeah, I think one of the joys of games like Sharp Practice or Infamy or the large skirmish game is going out and actively trying to find those unusual figures that are full of character. And I've got all of the 3 packs from the first release of Silver Bayonet here, the British ones. I have in my hand a piece of Silver Bayonet stuff. So, and I'm going to get I see they've got the other ones coming out, the Russians coming out. Yeah, I think they're great. It's great fun. Great fun to collect them up.
Terrific stuff. Well, Jasper, I believe the Dutch for workshop is Werkplatz. And we've all really admired your handiwork on Twitter and also on the Analog Hobbies Painting Challenge. I mean, you do some fantastic work with military vehicles. I mean, really superb painting and modelling skills. So what have you been up to there in your Nederlands Werkplatz? I hope I've not mangled that.
That's pretty good, Sydney. Thank you. Well, what I've been able to finish that you've pretty much seen on the painting challenge, because I have a very modest goal there, but I'm not a fast painter, so everything that I finish goes there. In fact, I just before we started recording, I finished the blog. I don't think it's up yet, with a few more Russian figures, because I unwisely, I think Guy, if you listen to the WSS podcast, Guy, I think, told this story that he had a scenario planned, and he told me, we tend to sort of discuss articles before they go into WSS, and he told me, I have some figures here. I put the photos all worked out, and this was supposed to be on the Russian front, and he showed me a photo with some Russians and some Germans, and right in the middle of the group of Germans was a British para. And I told him that was not going to go in the magazine, and then I unwisely committed to providing the photos for that scenario. So I suddenly got stuck with building at least enough of a table so that we could take photos of a Russian village and a Russian platoon and whatever had to be in this scenario, which apparently includes a convoy of trucks, which I didn't have yet. So I've been making trucks, one of which I've finished for the painting challenge, and I've finished some more Russians today, and I've almost got 2 T-34s finished, and you guys can see with the camera that sort of over my left shoulder is some Russian stuff, Russian buildings that are under construction. And I'm working on that, and I can pitch something for a best bid on the bench, because I'm sorry, Rich. I I was thinking, this is going to take me 3 weeks to paint this Russian village with, painting weathered wood, doing a job to a level that I'm happy with is a pain in the butt because, it means you have to base coat it and then dry brush it, wash it, dry brush it endlessly. And I found this product from, I think it's either AK or MIG Productions, and it's called Wash for Wood. And it's an enamel-based wash. And so I just tried it. I airbrushed some of the buildings and all the fencing in light gray or in a light sort of ochre color. And I just took a brush and I splashed this wash over, and boom, looks like weathered wood. I think it's going to, require maybe like 1 or 2 light dry brushes with some light gray, and I'm done. It's like, this is a miracle product.
That is a miracle product.
Splash it all over.
Grab one. I don't know how it will translate. You can see it, not on the podcast, obviously.
Jasper is now moving across the floor.
In a mysterious way, his wonders to perform.
Here he comes. Looks like washed wood.
Well, it's going to need some varnish and a little dry brushing, but it's got that unevenness built in, which is nice.
Yeah, it has, isn't it?
And it is sort of, depending on the base coat, it'll become a warmer color or that's why I used gray, so get a sort of that weathered old look.
Yeah.
Bleak steps look.
Yeah, I thought it worked really well. Nice time save.
Yeah, top tip, mate. Top tip.
Another contender for best bit on the bench. Can we now go to you, Nick? What have you got to rival those very strong entries in this month's competition?
Well, it's competitive this time, isn't it? Competitive. It's been a busy month, actually, this month, because it's January. So I've been receiving all those
February,
things that I ordered.
Yeah,
Oh, it is now February. Yeah, we're halfway through February. Even better. So
halfway, we're 2/3 of the way through, you dickhead.
And there was me thinking I was getting lightning service from some of these companies. Actually, it's taken longer than I thought. But all those things that I ordered, you get that period after Christmas where you kind of sitting there and you go online and you see something, I'll buy that. You pick things up, don't you? After that, I do anyway, in that kind of post-Christmas when you realise that
really bored.
Yeah, you didn't get any wargaming related presents. So
Yeah.
Go and buy your own. And they've been coming in over that last month. So all that road that I ordered from Total Battle Miniatures, etc., that came in. I ordered so much road. I mean, it's top quality stuff. It's I don't know where he makes it from, but it's that kind of latex road that's great because it just drapes over the terrain. When you're using a cloth, it just drapes over it.
I think he makes it from money.
Funnily enough, the person who recommended that road system to me is Jasper. The first time I saw it was at Poldercon in the country.
I know. I've got it too, and it's really nice, and you were saying you got a whole lot of it, so I was like,
I got.
You must have had a good Christmas, and somebody gave you lots of envelopes.
Yeah, I got a lot of it, and I'm very glad that I did. But I've now been painting it with the and of course because it's latex, it's quite tricky to paint. I've been using that masonry paint to give it a coat, and getting a game ready. We're taking a game on the show circuit. I took a game to Big in Bristol for Winter Wonder Lard last week, which was actually a fantastic event. A guy was there. We have a photo to put on the wall of he and I together post COVID. We breathed closely to each other and all over each other for a couple of minutes, which was didn't result in death for either of us, so that was good. But we took the game there, and I've been putting the table up for that. So using that Total Battle Miniatures road for that, wanted to get that on the table, doing a bit about some of the buildings, and just making this game that I'm taking is set on the edges of the town of Best in Holland, where we went for the Battlefield Challenge Sydney that you remember. And I've been doing the crossroads at Best, and we put a fuel station on that crossroads, and I was looking for something that could be used for that. And Richard spotted that our friend, the genie, Paul Edwards, had a 15mm Swedish petrol station. He's got it on his website. Quite what makes it Swedish, I don't know. But I thought, well,
Abba serve you.
So I dropped him a line and said, hey, you know, what's the chance of getting this in a scale that fits with 28mm? So could be 148th, could be 150th, could be 156th, something like that. Anyway, we've got a fantastic print back from Paul that's now looks really great on that table, and taking that to big was good. I've got the petrol station done for that. I wanted another 20mm cannon. And I wanted it to not be the one from Warlord, because I've made the one from Warlord. I don't like it very much. It's kind of static. It's on a base plate. It's, you know, I wanted one that's on its wheels for this scenario. So I was trying to think how I was going to do that. And I actually noticed that I had in my pile of old stuff a 148 scale 20mm cannon, plastic one from I think maybe by Ace or somebody, one of these Russian manufacturers that you know, comes with no instructions, but actually you can work it out and build it, and it looks okay. So you know, that's been really enjoyable to do that, and to turn that into something that we could use has been great fun as well. So I took that, gave that its first outing when we were in Bristol at the weekend. So I mean, that was a nice piece of kit actually. It went together really quite well with a straight barrel, no bendy barrels here. It's got a straight barrel, but it is plastic. So I do wonder how that will survive contact with you, Richard, amongst other people. But it looks really good. And I'd also, in terms of the best bit of the bench, I mean, they'd all work for me. But I'm actually going to throw in a vote of support for the gunfighters, Rich, because based on the conversation that we had last week, when I was at Big, I bought a pack of gunfighters from the shop at Big, and I really rate those gunfighter figures. I've made them since, and I've had a bit of fun with them as well. I've made a machine gunning mare for my Dutch resistance fighters, a guy who's actually based on the core of one of these Western fighters, but with his legs and jacket. I mean, people had legs and jackets, you know, who would have thought it? They had legs and jackets in 1880. People also had legs and jackets in 1944. So these legs and jackets go together okay. Put the top hat on him to give him that official burger, you know, that mare look, and then stick a pair of Warlord arms on him for a machine gunning Sten gun, and we've got the machine gunning mare of Veckel. So I'm looking forward to painting him up. And so making those gunfighters was a good thing for the best bit on the bench. But my nomination from me for the best bit on the bench is the shop at the new Big. It's my first visit to Big, and Jim and Ellie, who run that, not only did they provide bacon sandwiches, okay, on that for that games day, which was superb. But they've got a great shop there, and I was able to pick up all kinds of scatter and paints and little clippers and everything you'd want from a little local war game shop. They've got there in Bristol. So if you're near Bristol, you should get down there and fill your boots, or fill your basket, more to the point. Rich?
Yeah, well, so really on a vote by vote basis, you've gone with a shop as the best bit on the bench. Well, that's an unlikely winner. Jasper's gone with a wash. But you also voted for the Cowboys, as did I, so I win 2-1-1.
Fair enough.
So the Cowboys, Sid, I think are really have got it hands down, mate. But you are the adjudicator, Sid. You're the adjudicator. The responsibility lies with you.
Well, I saw the Cowboys. I've not seen the big shop, but I saw the Cowboys and they looked really nice. I haven't seen the wash on wood so far, but what Jasper showed us looked very, very nice indeed. So because Jasper is our guest, and the guest is always right, it's a tie between Jasper and you. You have to put up with it.
I can live with that. Well done, Jasper. Congratulations on coming second.
Cowboys,
because you're a guest, you actually get to join me on the podium. That's great.
Do we get to defenestrate him now?
No. Jasper said he wouldn't come on if we were going to defenestrate him.
Oh.
There were tears, there were tantrums, but there we go. We let him in without it anyway.
Defenestration of Lard is a completely different game. We're not at that bit of the show yet.
Yeah,
but
true.
What you say actually about all of these different posing of figures, I think really bears out just how much fun you can have with smaller games. So during the course of the month, I've been doing a bit more of flashing blades. We've had a quick game of that the other day, Rich. I've been finishing off and have finished now my Paris Night Watch, and that was great fun to do, moving on to the Spanish. And the thing which really I'm taking away from just doing a skirmish game, is really the first one I've ever done, as just what fun it is to do figures. And you can spend longer on the figures. You can spend longer finding them online. You can look at different places like eBay. You can look at smaller providers. You can send over to, I've even sent off to Etsy. I never thought I'd ever get anything from Etsy, but there's some great people who are casting stuff on Etsy, and I got a couple of things from there. Just really small, specific things. Nick?
I got some jump-off markers from Etsy. I was looking for something. I wanted some different jump-off markers. I use lots of scatter on my tables. And because we're doing games at shows, I wanted people to be able to see the jump-off markers and know what they were. So on Etsy, I saw these kind of base plates with flags on, like objective markers, 3D printed. And I brought those and we used them big, and they're really good, actually. They're a bit bigger than normal jump-off markers, but you can stand 3 feet from the table and you can see where they are.
Yeah.
Which for demo games is really, really important.
Yeah, they looked first class, as you say, for a show or an event like that. It's absolutely first class. But I have to agree with you, Sid, in what you say in terms of the amount of time you can spend on individual figures with a skirmish game. I mean, I normally paint in big batches. I normally paint a whole platoon of World War II stuff at a time. Look at that on my painting stick, 2 figures. And I'm taking a lot more time with them, and I'm really enjoying doing it. You just, it's a bit more, especially with civilians, where you don't have the uniformity of dress. You don't want to be painting 7 different pairs of trousers and 7 different tops and whatever. So 2 figures, just a nice number. And I, having not painted anything really for 6 months, this has got me right back into it. I've loved doing it as well. Yeah, good call.
Another really good point, just before we move on, if you are feeling a bit jaded, actually doing just 1 or 2 figures and feeling that for a skirmish game, that's it. All you need to do is a great way back to regaining your mojo if your mojo's flagging a little bit in the month of February or even January. It's a great way of getting back into it.
If your calendar challenged.
All positive stuff. Anyway, so now let's wander back to the studio to see what big issues are waiting for us there.
From the makers of Chain of Command comes a tale of drama.
Mon capitaine, les Anglais are on the bridge.
Ah, so it seems we shall meet again, Captain Fondleo.
A tale of action.
That's it, lads. Give them another volley, they're falling back. Remember, 3 rounds a minute.
A tale of romance.
But Mr. Fondleo, you are so prominent.
For large skirmishes in the era of black powder, where the story ends, sharp practice begins.
Sydney Roundwood's Sofa of Sincerity.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Sofa of Sincerity. And Jasper, we have your spot ready for you on the couch of contemplation. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a couple of things we were really wanting to chat to you about and discuss. So firstly, I'd like to talk about some great news for customers in the European Union. As we know, since January, the full export and import rules are now applied to items posted into and out of the European Union. This means that customers in the EU buying from UK companies may well be charged import duties and a handling fee by EU customs and postal services. As part of the steps to make things as easy as possible for EU customers, I think that there's some Lardy rules which are now available on your site, Jasper. Can you tell everyone about what's been happening there?
Yeah, I can. Well, we ourselves, we used to ship from our books and magazines from the UK, and we were noticing over the last year that magazines, maybe even single magazines, were sent back because of customs issues, or people bought a book and then they were hit with customs, and it usually is a couple of euros of customs and then 15 euros in handling costs, unpleasant situations like that. And then actually the rules that you're referring to did come in effect of January 1st, but there was already a new VAT rule as of July 1st. The rules were changing on all the time and making it just very unattractive for people to order from the UK. So we went and found a second facility in the EU, in fact, here in the Netherlands, who would help us ship stuff from here. So we now had the added pleasure of keeping stock levels, a reasonable height in 2 facilities, 3 actually, because we have one in the US too, thanks to COVID. But that that's a lot of work and effort to get it all arranged. But then we got the idea that it is, once you have this whole infrastructure going, you might as well see if you can help some others deal with this issue, because there are ways to make it easier for your European customers to order from you and be reasonably certain that they're not going to get hit with import tax. But that's a lot of faff for companies to arrange, and I can certainly understand if Rich is like, I don't need that headache. So Guy has been putting out some feelers with various, we thought, rules publishers, especially smaller rules publishers. And Osprey Osprey has a strange way of dealing with the new situation as well. But so even bigger publishers have issues. But we figured that independent publishers such as yourselves might be helped by making a deal with us, and we would take care of transporting the books into the EU. We take care of any import tax and all that fun, which inevitably we do have to pay. But the handling costs, if you just import a whole bunch of stuff in one go, are much more reasonable than if it's just one item. And we'll store it here in the Netherlands, and if people order from us, we'll just ship it from here, and it's no extra hassle, and it's pretty quick too. So that's the deal that we made with you guys, and we'll probably add a few different rules publishers in the near future as well.
Yeah, it's certainly something that hopefully works for both parties. I mean, Jasper and I have known each other for years. Obviously, I write a column in WSS on a sort of every other episode basis. So it was the natural first stop for me to contact Jasper and ask him, and for him to talk to me about it, because we've got a good working relationship anyway. So hopefully that makes it easier for our customers in the EU, which is what the whole objective is about.
Yep, great move.
It certainly sounds like a really positive development for all the customers in the EU. So huge thanks from everyone and from all of us, Jasper, for participating in this venture. It sounds like a really good idea. But that's not the only reason that we asked you onto the show, because I believe in October of this year, 2022, we've got some joint plans which I think are very much more in the wheelhouse of the wargaming hobby and are really genuinely exciting. And they involve Arnhem. Now, who better to tell us about this than Nick, who's got an ongoing and seemingly everlasting love affair with that fine city. Nick, tell us what this is all about.
It feels like that. I do remember the days when I used to wargame other things, and those days will come again. But at the moment, I think I am hugely excited by this new development and this new proposal, which is really going to, I think, excite lots of people out there too. And I also feel hugely honoured. Sid, we've been asked if we would run a war game at the Hartenstein Hotel in Arnhem, which, as most people will know, is the headquarters, or was the headquarters, of British 1st Airborne Division in its Oosterbeek pocket. And the Airborne Museum there is a superb, well, is it a monument? It's a superb museum to go to, I can tell you that. And it's actually to be asked to work with them to do this is really lovely and exciting. And our friend Jasper is going to tell us all about it, because of course it's in Holland. He's in Holland. He knows all about it. Tell us more, Jasper.
Well, the thing is, the Airborne Museum, of course, has been closed for about nearly 2 years now, with some pauses in the meantime, where they could be open for a limited amount of time and a limited number of people. But just before this country went into lockdown, they actually reopened after having been closed voluntarily for about 6 months for a complete redo. And there's lots of opinions about that, of course, because there's a lot of people are very passionate about the history of the Battle of Arnhem, and they all have their opinion about what the museum should be like. But that's not the point. The point is that the museum director at the time decided in her wisdom that the front room, I'm sure a lot of people have been in the museum. The front room used to be where your tour of the museum started, sort of 2007. There used to be the 3D display. You could almost say a diorama. It was sort of a big map model of the Arnhem Oosterbeek area, where they used a light display with a slideshow and commentary to show you what happened, and there was a metal case and stuff like that. All that is gone. This room is now sort of a reception room, and it has some. It's supposed to refer to the Oosterbeek. We might come to that later. Oosterbeek was a bit of an unusual place at the time. It is a lot of villas. It used to have a lot of room and board type situations and hotels, because people came there. It was a pretty area, and artists came there a lot. So this room has been restored to sort of pre-1940s splendor with some art on the walls, and it's otherwise completely empty. It's supposed to be for events and things. And there's also a new director who has appeared after this remodeling of the museum, and he used to work at the Dutch National Army Museum as a public affairs type guy. And I figured, this man at that museum, he may have met a wargamer in his life. And he might, I might be able to explain what it is and see if this large room could be used to put in one or more games. And oddly enough, and to my great surprise and delight, he was interested. And so we kind of started there, and we first thought maybe we could have several tables, and we were trying to get plans of the space, and I think Rich and Nick said no, we should have maybe just one table, one very large table, and see if we can run a game on there. I think that's the idea, right?
That's the idea, yeah. So and it comes with a huge weight of responsibility, to be given the opportunity to run a war game at the Hartenstein is, I think, for anybody who war games Arnhem, is almost like, it feels like a bit like a pinnacle, really, to be able to have almost an honor to be able to do that. I know this sounds a bit sycophantic, but actually it's the opportunity to take the game to the heart of where the battle was, and to really just absorb all that and to share it with other people is a great opportunity for us. And we're really excited by the project. We're putting together a small team. Let me be clear about this. This is not a Lardy Games Day. This is not a war games event. This is a special dedicated part of the museum's activity. It will be people who go to the museum on that day will get the bonus activity of seeing the war game, as I understand it. We're still defining the plans.
It will be open as normal.
Yeah,
everything. Yep.
And there will be a small group of us who will be involved in the development, the planning, and the delivery of that game. So it's not going to be an open to all event, although of course everyone is invited to go to the Airborne Museum at any time. And if you ever get the chance to go, you should do, because it's brilliant. And so we're putting those plans together. We're thinking about what the table layout will be, what part of the game will we show. We think it's really important that we have the Hartenstein, because we're at the Hartenstein. But if you put the Hartenstein on a war games table and you want to show some fighting, then you have to make it quite a big table, because the Hartenstein, of course, is the command point at the center of the perimeter. So you then have to think, well, actually, what part of this battle are we going to represent, and how are we going to do that? So we've got that plan now underway, starting to think about what that looks like, and starting to do some pretty specific potential terrain builds to go with it as well. And I think we're going to talk about terrain in a bit, as I understand it. But it's, yeah, we're hugely excited by it, and I can't wait for October to come around. Well, in fact, I can, because the planning and preparation is going to be as much fun as the delivery. And then, of course, we're going to be in Arnhem for a weekend. Have you booked Flesh and Co. yet, Jasper, for our evening meal?
Once you tell me how many people are going to be there.
Well, it depends how many steaks I can eat.
Flesh and Co. Is that a dance group?
Something like that, isn't it? I don't know. There's
Is it like Legs and Co?
Different side of Arnhem.
There's various potentially excellent eating places, and the whole thing sounds like it's going to be great fun. I can't wait for it, and I'm looking forward to planning it with you guys. So yeah, that's where we're at, Sydney. It's exciting, yeah.
Sounds really exciting, really unusual, really different, and kind of like a one-off opportunity. It's really exciting, and I can't wait and see what you come up with as regards the game and the terrain. I'm sure a lot of people will be following those developments with a great deal of interest.
Sydney Roundward. He's got red trousers.
Now, this also ties in with an email that I received just a few days ago from a long-time Oddcast listener and sometime correspondent, Ned Sullivan from Womagarama in New South Wales, Australia. Ned put pen to paper, or actually typed it on an email. G'day, Sydney. Please don't do the accent. Okay, Ned, sorry about that. Me and my mates are loving Chain of Command, the pint-sized campaigns, and the fabulous content in Lard magazine. One of the big things we love is the unique aspect of each of these. Currently, we're as excited as a dingo in a billabong about some of the late war campaigns in the latest magazine. Set in Germany in 1945, they've been fun to play. We haven't started all of the games yet, but the inspiration from Joe Bilton's article about terrain has been fantastic. It really made us think about trying to get a very particular German look. So we've been busy building a whole raft of terrain in readiness for that. Can you tell me, you blokes seem to play such a wide range of games, how do you try to get each one to feel like the particular geographical location? Also, can I get a signed photo of you, please, Sydney, on your own, not with the other two? Well, Ned, thank you very much. That's a very interesting question. I'll sort you out with the photograph. No problem at all about that. And one that I thought was going to be particularly pertinent with the Arnhem game coming up. So, gentlemen, how much do you feel that terrain is important in our war games? And following on from that, how will your Arnhem game look and feel like that very specific, particular location at a specific, particular point in time?
Are you running in new teeth, Sid? Because you don't seem to be able to talk properly at the moment.
No.
Right, okay.
Friday night, so I have obviously been drinking to start with.
The rain in Spain don't taste
We
like
have a
what it
lot
ought
of
to.
international listeners, and I think that they probably don't really want a broad Yorkshire or Hull accent. For Ken, that doesn't sound like
that's
yours.
not Yorkshire, mate. That's Humberside.
Let's not go there.
Right.
Because
Well,
that
indeed,
podcast will be
let's not go
derailed
there.
very quickly.
So
Right.
I think the question, Richard, the question was about how do you make tables fit the region you're setting the game in, I think.
How important is it? Well, I've always banged on about the fact that I think that the table should set the scene. It's almost like a good painting on a wall is enhanced by having an appropriate frame, if that makes sense. And the table and the appropriate lighting and the appropriate space on the wall. And the table effectively does all of that. It enhances the game. It gives us a point of reference that allows us to buy into the game that we're about to play. And I think the quicker we're immersed in the narrative of the story and the game, the more enjoyment we get out of the game, the more we are able to suspend our disbelief. But so it's hugely important, I think. I mean, Nick, you mentioned scatter. as something that you had in your best game. I always think that scatter is really important because it brings the table to life. I mean, I remember a game we did on a roundabout in that was Nijmegen, wasn't it?
Nijmegen.
Yeah, and some of the houses had
Yeah.
dustbins out the back with like a cat on top, and it's just that dustbin kind of really brought it to life. Nick, tell us about your approach with scatter.
Well, I thought exactly what you just said, Rich. I think you need to. What we're trying to create on the tabletop is a kind of extension of the narrative, isn't it? So I think we said before, when I'm gaming, I like to be able to hear somebody talk about the game, and for that narrative to sound like something I could have read in the book, and it would fit. So what does that mean? What it means is, it's certainly if you're reading some of the eyewitness accounts, or classically the Americans are really good at the kind of first person story about I did this and then I ran here and I took cover behind the bins and then I jumped over the fence and there was an outdoor toilet and I hid behind that, and all these little bits of terrain that matter in that story. I want to try and get them into the story that we're recreating on the tabletop. So it matters that houses have yards. It matters that yards have fences or walls, even ornamental walls, Richard. It's important to get the right kind of wall in there, isn't it? And then so you think, well, actually, if we're going to give this a flavour, you've got dustbins, we've got milk churns, we've got jerry cans, we've got sandbags typically. Sandbags. Well, actually, most urban areas don't normally have sandbags. Sandbags are in prepared military positions. If you walk around Arnhem on a Sunday afternoon, you're not going to find many sandbags. You're probably going to find lots of milk churns, a few discarded sets of clogs, and some empty beer bottles, probably. I don't know, bicycles and that kind of stuff. So this kind of everyday stuff really makes a difference. The petrol station that I've made from Best, think about what a petrol station has. It's not only a forecourt and a petrol pump. Think about what's out the back. What's out the back is an old stack of boxes and there's a pile of old crap and all kinds of stuff. And you need to have that to give it the flavour. So the flavour really matters. The flavour also needs to be campaign or period specific. The fences, for instance, need to be the right kind of fences, the right kind of walls. The houses need to look like the right kind of houses. Normandy, which most of us were raised on for our wargaming. Most of our battlefields look like Normandy. So it's quite common to see somebody playing a game of I don't know, somewhere set in Operation Market Garden, and this big stone Norman farmhouse to be stuck in the middle of the table. Well, we need to try and move away from that and get the right terrain. Jasper's doing his Eastern Front terrain, the buildings that he's doing for that. We put the effort into our figures. We should put the same effort into the tables to make them look like the right thing. Jasper's nodding his head, right? Jasper, talk to us, because I'm monologuing now.
No, I totally agree that I think somebody else said it's like the terrain is like the third. It's the third player on the board. It's not just obviously in when it comes to tactics. Certainly with a game like Chain of Command, terrain can be hugely influential. But if you have bad terrain, it just takes you completely out of the scene. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen games at game stores where it's just some random stuff that's just plonked down so that you have something for your figures to hide behind.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I mean, I think that terrain is like your art gallery metaphor. It's really the stage in which everything happens, isn't it? It's what you approach. It's what immerses you from the word go. And I think that when you're trying to recreate something which is a historical miniature war game, the nature of the terrain is really important. So that accuracy immerses somebody at a place in a time. I think the other side of it is what Jasper's just mentioned, and is that the terrain has a great gaming role to channel and to relate the players to different parts of the terrain. And that, although we've talked about specifics, I don't think that means flooding the table. It doesn't mean to have absolutely immersive terrain everywhere. The key point, for me anyway, is that you want the focus of the table to immerse, but also different places on the table to do that, and other places to be more open, because you can't sacrifice the ability to play a good game by having fantastic terrain everywhere. The table as an experience can really work without having to flood everything with intricate bits of detail everywhere. So I think it's a real balancing act, and a great table has elements of both.
And there's something in there also about scale, which is, and Rich, we've been talking about the Arnhem game, etc. We've got decisions to make about how we replicate certain areas of terrain. There's always this challenge, isn't there, about how many houses, you look at an aerial photo, how many houses are there along this stretch of road? Well, there's 16. Well, okay, if we're going to, we would never put 16 houses on the wall. You might reduce that down. What each one of your house represents 2 of the real, on the real thing. The key thing is to reduce the flavor, isn't it? You take the flavor of that action and condense it so that what you've got on the tabletop might not be a direct photocopy of what the map looks like. Okay, it might be very close to it, and I guess the ideal is that you map it perfectly, but you take what's there and you condense it to the point where actually I recognize this, and it makes a playable game.
You raise a really good point, and one of my experiences in life has been being involved with new build housing, building houses, and what normally happens is Mr. and Mrs. Jones buy the house from plan, and then they're invited along to see the house as it's being built by the property developer. And they turn up and the footings are in. And for the first time, they can see the shape of the house. And Mr. and Mrs. Jones leave in tears because their house is tiny. It's absolutely minuscule when you just see the footings laid out. And they have to be reassured by the builder that, don't worry, it will actually be big enough, it will be fine. And so if you take that with wargaming and actually use the precise footprint of real houses, it can actually look wrong because the houses we live in tend to be actually smaller than the models we use. Jasper, you're waving at us from the Netherlands. Hello, come in, Netherlands.
Hello, thank you for allowing me.
That's enough now. That's enough. Right. What else?
The game Pictionary. I think terrain is sort of like that, because certainly coming from a background of scale modeling, it's very easy to lose yourself in the idea that you're basically building a diorama, and your table's never gonna. You can't transport it. It's going to be very fragile, and you're never going to finish it. But I try to think of it as Pictionary in the sense that you try to get the essential parts of the battlefield, but also of the feel for that area where your game is set. Picture that in the buildings and in general area.
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing for the Arnhem game is the first step was to decide. Well, one of the first steps was to decide what areas of the battle of the used to be perimeter we wanted to model. Once we've done that, it's a case of identifying what photographs we have of properties in that area, but also of those classic photographs that you see, like the 3-inch mortar team operating, or maybe a knocked out Char-B or a knocked out Jeep, and identifying those little scenes that we can then create as a vignette, because they create little hooks on which people can hang their perception of the game. If we've got number 34 Clog Street and it's got a knocked out Jeep out the front, we can do a model of 34 Clog Street with a knocked out Jeep out the front, and people can see the picture on the wall. People who are attending the game can see the picture on the wall and can see that on the table. And that allows them to buy into the bigger setting.
But the building that Jeep is in front of has got to look Dutch. It's got to look like it fits in the used to be. It doesn't maybe have to be the exact house in that photograph, but it needs to be of that Dutch style. And it's only recently that we've had the ability to actually purchase those items that don't look like they're in Normandy. Normandy, even the Hay Saint farmhouse, looks more like a Norman farmyard than it does a Dutch one. So you can move it from one direction to the other. But Holland is difficult, right? Holland is hard because it goes down as well as up. In fact, it doesn't go up very much at all. And lots of things from the road. The road is often the highest level in the game, whereas most of our games, the road, if you think about it, is the base level and everything else goes up. So you have to somehow make the eye believe you're in a different landscape as well, which is not the case so much in urban games, but in rural games, you need to elevate the road, have sunken ditches, drainage ditches, that kind of thing. It's giving the feel of the country inside, isn't it? Rich, you're waving at me then, but I kept going.
Yeah, you did. You kept waffling.
I refused to yield.
I remember when we went out to the Netherlands a few years ago, we went out specifically with a brief from war bases to take lots of photographs of ordinary Dutch buildings, because they wanted to create a range of buildings that covered the Netherlands, because there was so much interesting and exciting fighting that went on in the Netherlands, and the idea of having this Normandy stone farmhouse is just not right. So up to that point, there was hardly anything available, and of course now we've got options in 3D printing that we are examining, because when it comes to creating the Arnhem landscape, we're going to be able to, we hope, replicate very specific looks of the buildings that were actually there.
I think all of that makes perfect sense. I mean, I think the one thing that Jasper said is that you're trying to create something that's workable, not just a diorama. And one of the things that has really helped in doing that has been companies like War Bases, who've produced theatre-specific, period-specific buildings, which assist people being able to build that up. It's not just that you've got a very limited scope of resin buildings. You've now got some really good options which are available. And with 3D printing, as you've seen, Nick, with people like Paul helping us with that, that's really turbocharged a lot of terrain that we've used, or scatter, or actual architectural terrain. So
it's giving me a massive problem. 3D printing is giving me a massive storage problem. Yeah. Because I've now got all these things. I can just say, can we get one of these? And there you go. Next thing you know, the genie has produced one. And it's amazing, really, the things we've got. Trams, tram stops, buildings, dairies, petrol stations. You think of it, and we can produce it now, and that's brilliant, because it means our tables can be very, very specific. Holland is a great example. Netherlands is a great example of the countries, of the terrain we can produce. But you can extend that anywhere. In the past, we've used peninsula buildings for Sicily and Mediterranean and Arab countries, and we use Arab dwellings for Mexican villages, that kind of thing. We can actually be much more specific now in the buildings that we produce. We can create custom builds that give us the flavor that we want. And that includes walls. Where I used to have one box of generic walls, I've now got about 4 boxes of different types of wall, including ornamental ones, and to make the joke twice in one show at my own expense. So yeah, the 3D printing, mate, it's the future. I keep telling you this. It's definitely, it's here already, isn't it?
Do you have bitter and twisted walls? Because that would seem quite appropriate.
Yeah, I do, with posters of you on it, with darts sticking out.
One of the other things that people like to do, when not so much for the players, but for the people who are creating the game, is that element of immersion in a project, which can take some time. And I think we all get immersed in the figures, but I think the terrain has its own sort of immersion. And if you're able to build a battlefield-specific terrain, it keeps that momentum going. I know that, over the years, the projects where you've built terrain which is specific to a place and a time, they seem to be the projects that keep going, and you keep being interested because you can add to that terrain. It corresponds with your figures. It's not just that you've got a generic terrain on which you're just putting Napoleonic figures in. You're doing something specific, Rich.
Well, let me ask Jasper a very specific question then. Jasper, you are a Dutch celebrity. What would you say that we had to have in terms of the landscape, the classic signature bits that will tell you that table is Arnhem?
Arnhem or Oosterbeek specifically? Or,
Oosterbeek specifically, yeah.
Oosterbeek has this, certainly for the area that we're looking at, has this weird mix of big mansions of the early 20th century, Jugendstil, and mixed with some big brick houses and some more modest houses to its north. And if you think about it, you're looking for houses that mostly far more brick. You're going to see far more brick. You're not going to see much natural stone. Some plaster work. The roof tiles, I suppose, you could use like a Mediterranean style. It's the wavy roof tiles. It's not slate. Almost none of it.
Right.
Some houses are going to have reed or thatched roofs. Those are the elements that make it Dutch. A really good, nice thing that Nick had on his table that I saw in the photos from Big were the shutters, painted shutters. That's more of a rural thing.
And color of the shutters?
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Generally red and white, yeah?
It depends.
Mine are. I hope that's right.
Well, it can be. It depends on the traditionally that is the colors of whoever is the landlord in the area.
Yeah. Like drain pipes in the UK, they're quite ironic that we paint our drain pipes in the color of the local house.
I like the shutters better, I think.
Shutters, drain pipes, which is best?
It's elements like that. It is pretty hard to do, but I've recently seen indeed some houses that you had and some of the war bases houses. There's some really good shapes coming out that you can work from.
What about the small detail then? Things like fencing, I don't know, signs of clogs for sale or whatever. What sort of small detail should we be making sure that we include?
Well, like road signs, only in tourist areas. Road signs are usually they're now, I think at the time they were either dark blue and white, sort of had bands, because that's the colors of the Dutch National originally Cycling Association, that they did that. Fencing is, like fields are fenced in just barbed wire. So there's very little like sort of picket fencing.
Right.
Gardens are generally well kept. Houses have a front garden and a rear garden with maybe a higher wall or some hedges, stuff like that.
It's much more. It's going to sound the wrong word, but it's more civilized, I think, to do the Dutch. It's more. You've got to think more about. This is where people live. This is where people live. Their residences. They're not commercial properties or farms. They're houses. They have gardens. They have little sheds and outhouses and nice fences and nice little walkways and nice shrubs in the front garden. And
it's all, everybody's little patch is fenced off or marked in some way. It's you read it in the eyewitness accounts from Arnhem, from the Battle of Arnhem, that British soldiers A, had trouble with all those fences, and B, everything was so demarcated that they felt like they had to go up to the front door and ask permission to go through the back and out into the alleyway.
Yeah.
The classic picture that I think of is the doctor's house in the film A Bridge Too Far, with that beautiful garden at the start that at the end is littered with men. It's a casualty station. But that's kind of the image I have in my mind.
I think that's it.
Yeah,
and I think that's it. And the dilemma that we will have with the game that we're going to put on at the Hartenstein is going to be getting that right. We're going to create in miniature that which people can see from the window. And so we're going to need to be able to, it's going to have to be accurate without being precise. And it's going to have to give the flavor. We're not going to be able to, for instance, the MDS Crossroads, we're going to need it to look like the MDS Crossroads, the Dressing Station Crossroads. The buildings are going to need to look like, at least in caricature, some of the buildings that we can see in the photographs. We can't stick Norman churches on those corners and just say it's a dressing station. It's got to look the part. So we've been, this is going to be a significant investment, and the good news is we've got some good people working with us to get that work through. So hugely excited. If I said I'm hugely excited about it, I'm hugely excited about it, and can't wait to get cracking on it a bit more. Really, we've already done some planning, and we've already got some sort of prototype buildings in the works, but more to come, and we'll keep you posted on how that goes.
So that does, of course, beg the question: is your Arnhem supplement you're working on real, or were you just lying to us all along?
Well, it would be kind of remiss of me not to, not for us, not for me. For me, for us, it'd be kind of remiss for us not to get that out so that we can, if these buildings are being developed as well, for us to
maybe you should present the first copy. You should present the first copy at the event and just get a photo taken with the director.
That's a good idea.
Maybe won't know what to do with it, but
maybe there's a museum shop will stock it.
Yeah, perhaps he's got a large rubbish bin he can chuck it straight in. That's the level of interest he'll have in that. Yeah.
But tell me, would we have to ship it out there to avoid the EU rules using the new regime that we spoke about earlier, or could I take it with me in the boot of my car? That's what we need to know.
Smuggle it, but you have to wear a tricord.
Where are we, Sid?
Well, I think we are at the end of a very, very good discussion about that. I think it's very exciting, very interesting. But I think after talking about supplements and reading material, we should probably take a trip that we haven't taken for a while and wander along the landing to the Lard Island Library. So can you both tell me, as we walk there, which books are you going to be using in preparation for this trip to Arnhem?
Well, Nick, you're the Arnhem book boy.
A mountain of them is the truth of it. We've been looking through many different books around the perimeter we're looking at. So we think we're going to be looking at the northern perimeter with a slight bit to the east, a slight bit to the west. Imagine a U, an upside down U with the Hartenstein sort of at the bottom and a U shape around it. So we're looking at that part of the perimeter. So we're looking at records of units that fought around there. So we're looking at glider pilots. We're looking at 21st Independent Para. We're looking at Recce. We're looking at a bit of the KOSB, I think, aren't we there? And also the borders. So all these units have histories that are in some difficult to get hold of books, most of which we've been able to get hold of between us. So we've got some of those books, and I've got some books from our friend A. Deacon as well, I've still got them on almost permanent loan from his library. I've had them now for a couple of years. So using all of those to help us. Yeah, using all
He
those. He
told me yesterday. He said, "Where are my bloody books?" He's had them for 3 years.
Yeah. So I can't put my hand on any one particular one. I think the then and now books, two hardback ones, the photographs of those are going to be really helpful because they combine aerial photos with black and white photos taken at the time, or taken, let's be careful because some of them are taken in 1945, but generally, they're going to be what we're going to be looking at. And Jasper's got his own sources as well. So I can't say a book in particular, Sid, but a theme of books.
So let's not bother going in the library. Let's walk back to where we were and get on with the rest of the show.
Well, I suppose we could do that. Jasper, we should probably ask you, as somebody who's actually living in Arnhem and has lived in Nijmegen, do you have a favourite?
Well, there's a couple of books that there's a recent book that came out by a very famous author whose name escapes me now, but that's probably not something that should go very high on your list. Martin Middlebrook's book about the Battle of Arnhem is still very good. Are
there any books which tell?
Buckingham. There's a book by if you want to. Some people might get bored out of the mind because it's a big fat book with tiny print by the book, but the book by Buckingham about the Battle of Arnhem really gives you some new perspective, is very critical, which is, well, it's sort of has become the fashion since about 2000. Yeah. It's a nice contrast. If you read Middlebrook, which is a narrative account very much from the British side, and then you contrast that with that, then you suddenly go, oh yeah, but the Germans were there too, and they capitalized on some of the British mistakes. It's a nice way to oppose the two sides.
A nice companion piece then to read the two together and get a different perspective on it. Okay.
I always like the one which is it never snows in September, which does it from the German side.
Yep, that's the first one really that does that.
Yeah, it's a good balance with some of the others.
Robert Kosher, who also wrote A Street in Arnhem as well, which is a really good.
That is available in Dutch because I've seen that.
Yeah, it is. I
museum
mean,
shop.
a fair amount of Arnhem books has been,
Mm.
for understandable reasons, has been translated into Dutch.
There's a huge amount written about it. It's one of the biggest campaigns with lots of interest. Lots of people in the UK obviously have connections in history. Lots of people in the US have connections in history. And you've got all the people that live out there now that still celebrate and recognize the fighting that went on. If you go there and visit the location, the people are so knowledgeable. I remember when we went there and the guy just appeared out of nowhere and started giving us all the detail about what had gone on in that street, and and the respect that they have for it out there. It's a brilliant place. We go on about this all the time. I'm gonna zip it now.
Well, at that point, that's probably pretty much all we've got time for really this evening. We'd all like to thank you, Jasper, for coming on the show, and thanks always to Nick and to Rich. But before we all disappear, a few dates for the diary. So on the 5th of March, we're all going to be at Hammerhead at the Newark Showground, where we've got an impromptu Lard Zone with Chain of Command run by Nick, Strength and Honour by Mark Backhouse, What a Cowboy by Charlie Walker and John Savage, What a Tanker from the Harrogate War Games Club. And Rich, I think you're going to be there in what you describe as being a skyving capacity.
Yeah, it's my intention to do as little as possible whilst trying to look busy. But yeah, we're going to be there. Jasper won't be joining us, sadly.
No.
But when you say we're all going to be there, so if his hordes of young lady fans turn up expecting to see Jasper, he won't be there.
But they can see Guy because I think he's coming.
Yeah, he's lovely hair.
So,
Yeah,
so
a
look
lot more
out for
of mine
Guys.
than
Look
me.
out for Guy's hair because he'll be at the Lard Zone. And if you walk in the front door, and if you head in the 11 o'clock direction, when you walk in, you'll find that the 4 lard tables. We're set out in an L shape. I think L for lard.
Right. That's good. L for lard.
L for lard is going to be the theme of the day.
Yeah, we'll have to do that in Morse. We'll have to tap that out in Morse, like V for victory.
What's L then in Morse?
I don't know. Get on with it.
Rich, are you going to tell people about Lard America?
Oh, yeah, can do. Yeah, I mean, absolutely excited to hear about our chums in Lard America going to a Adepticon in Schaumburg, Illinois, wherever that is, on the long weekend of the 25th to the 29th of March. Games of What a Tanker, Chain of Command, Sharp Practice on offer. If you're free and happen to be in Schaumburg, Illinois, which sounds like a place to be, then why not to drop in and join them for what looks like a great event. And actually, the location, I looked it up, the venue looks pretty swish, actually, compared to some of the places I've been to in America for War Games conventions.
I think it's very close to Chicago and O'Hare Airport. I've looked it up too once.
Right. Well, that's my kind of town. So, yeah, great place to be. So if you're jetting into Chicago, then that's the place to go when you have a few hours free.
And if you're not in Chicago or Schaumburg, Illinois, the same weekend, 26th and 27th of March, our chum in the Netherlands, Elcho Verage, is running a sharp practice event called the Whole Lotta Rossi Part 2 in Amsterdam. So, Rich, I think you're going to be travelling over to the Netherlands for that one.
I am. And a bit excited about that because not only are we going to be playing sharp practice all weekend, but we've got a bit of a battlefield tour planned for the way back. We're going to Moerdijk and Dordrecht to have a look at the 1940 battles that took place there with the German Fallschirmjäger doing their very own, a bridge not too far. To tie that in with Arnhem. So that's going to be great. I've been looking forward to walking that ground for a long time, but COVID got in the way. But now the shackles are off and I'm free. I'm going over there with a few sharp practicing mates and to expose them to the kryptonite that is a World War II gaming. And that, I know they're really looking forward to that. So, yeah. That's going to be great.
You think Grave Bridge is long? You wait till you go to the railroad bridge near Dordrecht. That is just insane.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about taking a tape measure with me, just so I could check. Size is important sometimes.
You're going to need a whole suitcase full of them.
I shall bear that in mind. I shall have to book extra luggage.
How long will the table need to be, Rich, to get the whole bridge on it?
Well, who knows? But it will be a bridge you can shoot over. That's the important thing. With chain of command, you will be able to engage the enemy on the far side, no matter how big the table.
Ow.
A saucer of milk for me, Sid, while you carry on.
Very well. We'll move on to the rest of the summer then in that case, because Operation Market Larden is going ahead on the 11th of June in Evesham, and deep fried lard looks increasingly likely to be on in Musselburgh near Edinburgh on the weekend of the 18th of June. And on the 9th of July, we've got a brand new event on the calendar, which is quite local to me and Richard and Nick, and that's Oozing Lard near Bedford. And rather excitingly, Paul Hicks is sculpting a fabulous figure for those attending the inaugural event. I don't know what that is, actually. Perhaps
I know what it is, but I don't think I'm allowed to say yet.
It's top secret. But needless to say, gosh, it's going to be limited edition, and that is going to be the kind of thing that's going to be worth probably millions of pounds in just a few years.
Do you want it? You know you want
do I want it, baby? I do.
So I'm looking forward to going to that, not only to get not just to get my free figure, but also
get Larged up.
Yeah, I'm going to run a game there too. Looking forward to it.
Sounds great. Well, from metal figures to the home of lead, a new Lardy Games Day will be happening in Nottingham in August.
Ooh.
And we'll bring you more news on that as soon as the green light comes on. And lots more is planned for the second half of the year generally, because we've got events in Yorkshire, Exeter, Arnhem, as we've been talking about. And also, I'm hoping that we'll all be off to Crisis in the wonderful city of Antwerp in November once again. Last time we went was 2019. Last 2 years, we didn't get there for obvious reasons. But more on those as the year progresses and we know much better what's happening. So all there is to do this evening is really say, Jasper, thank you so much for joining us. It's been
defenestrate him.
Yeah,
defenestrate him. Drag him out the window.
Drag him out the window.
We're not defenestrating anyone. That's a different game.
Oh,
You grab his legs, Rich.
It's been great to have you here and hear about the event, which is going to be taking place in Arnhem. It sounds absolutely wonderful. And finally, as always, my thanks to you, the listener, for tuning in and enjoying the show with us. We hope to see you again when we hope we will be hosting what will be our 50th Oddcast in our 20th year. So exciting times indeed. But on that, with me, Richard and Nick, we'll wish you good night.
Good night.
Good night.
good night.
And just play out with Roger Barraclough and the gang.
You're not allowed to say good night, Jasper. You weren't mentioned.
Oh, goedenavond.
I'll cut that out. Nobody wants to hear you.
No, keep that little bit in. It's always good. Right.
Good night.
I'm going to stop recording now.
I've stopped recording. Have you stopped recording?
I have
Jasper?
stopped recording.
I've stopped
Yeah,
recording.
I stopped recording.
How do I stop recording? Oh yeah, stop recording. There you go.
In tonight's show, Sidney Roundwood was joined by Nick Skinner and Richard Clark, with music by Roger Barraclough and his band.